Yes, Cassandra. What is your take really on sex? Is it really a big deal?
Uh, it depends on the type of person you are. It is a big deal. It is a big deal because, we all have to face it, but you have to know within yourself, what you can handle or what you think it is. It depends on the person. But,
Okay.
Right, it depends on the person.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Okay. Adam, what do you think about that? What is your take on sex? Is it something that people need to keep all this hoo-ha about? Is it, synonymous with brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, taking out the trash?
I agree with Cassandra. It depends because if you're a person that doesn't like it, then you can't be with somebody that does.
Oh. Oh.
So, if you want to compare it like that, yeah, if you compare it to something more immediate like paying bills and brushing your teeth and taking out the garbage, well, I prefer my house to smell clean so I can take away garbage first.
Okay, priorities here.
I would, back in the days when I was young enough to be at university and I had a Hotmail account and I actually used to read forwards. I remember reading this one time that said that sex is like oxygen, it's no big deal unless you're not getting any. For a long time, I kind of believed that was true, and then my perspective was actually changed by somebody. So I agree that it does depend who you are, but I will only speak for myself. I don't understand how you could not like sex, but that's just me. And I do think that it is a huge deal. Well, we will get to that later depending on what Denise has to say tonight, but I do think that when you look around in terms of the way that we deal with sex in Barbados or don't deal with it, you will see that as a tremendous deal. Right, Juliet?
But when we look at society today, when we look at our culture, when we look at popular culture, when we look at the music videos, when we see our style of dancing, and when we watch some of the things that we watch on television and on video and so on, we see so much sex. We see even sex even in simple advertisements. But what really, why do you think our society is so consumed with sex? What makes sex so popular?
I would answer that by saying what I was getting at in the previous response, which is that I had the opportunity to live overseas for part of my life. And during that small time, I was struck by coming back to Barbados and noticing how preoccupied in our everyday lives we seem to be with sex. And when I say that, I mean the whole way that we talk, the way that we relate to one another, the number of sexual innuendos that you can hear on a given day. And I asked somebody, I remember being in a conversation once this is when it was probably in my early 20s, and it was funny because we were all adults, but we were there talking about sex, and I was just thinking about how when I was in France at the gym, I never used to hear those guys talking about sex. They would talk about sports or music or something like that, the new artist that just came out. But when I would go to the gym here, my God, it's like porn movie. It's like a blue movie. So I asked somebody why they thought that was, and the person's take on it was that people in France begin to talk with their families about sex from an early age. Sex is out there, it's something that's open, it's discussed within, I guess, school and family as well. Whereas I certainly never remember receiving any sex ed from any parent or any relative in my family. I learned as I went along, and I assume that the average person in Barbados did as well.
Okay. Cassandra, what do you think about it? Why is it so popular?
I agree strongly with
Corey?
Because, your parents don't want to talk to you about certain things. Well, most parents. And sometimes you are left to find out about things on your own. Luckily for me, I had a mother who was very open. And it was just like, why are we talking about this? But then everybody doesn't have the same experience. So I think it depends on how you are brought up as well, in the environment you are brought up, because some people are open with it, whereas others, they're not as open.
Okay, that's true. Adam, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. We live in a culture today where there's something called hooking up. You know, people just get together with somebody to have sex. They don't necessarily have a friendship with them or they have a relationship with them. What is your opinion about this type of sex? What's causing people to do this? Just, you know, hook up for sex.
I believe one of the primary reasons for it is the fact that breakups and divorces are so high.
Okay.
Because people get divorced for different reasons, or relationships end for different reasons, but majority of the time, what people start out as and what they end up to be is completely different. And I believe that people just like a relationship that has a backdoor. That's
okay.
my opinion.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it, though.
Okay, you don't have a problem with it. Cassandra, what do you think about it?
It depends on the person, because like if you're hurt from a relationship or whatever, sometimes you don't want to get involved emotionally and, you know, get to know the person and all that there. Sometimes you just, you know, you got itch and it needs to be scratched.
Okay, so you're talking about emotionless sex. So can sex be emotionless? Can it be something that you just do without getting deeply attached or anything like that?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, Corey, do you agree? Is sex something that you can just do and it's emotionless? You're not attached to the person?
I think it's easier for a man than it is for a woman. But although, you know, any sort of thing seems to go these days, but a friend of mine once told me that this is a female friend, that if you're going to climb up on a man, on top of a man more than twice, you got to know what you're getting into. In other words, you get emotionally attached. So, of course, it's possible to have emotionless sex. And, you know, you were asking why so many hookups. It's like, why not? It's just a straightforward thing for a lot of people.
Okay, I want to spend some more time with this idea of emotionless, connectionless sex before I share my personal opinion. Okay, so let's paint a little scenario for you. You go out for a night on the town with, you know, your friends, and your girlfriend or your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, they're not there with you, and you meet someone else. You know, that kind of tickles your fancy. You know, you're attracted to them for whatever reason. You know, your eyes make for, something happens, and you can feel that chemistry going, right? What do you do in a scenario like that? Do you just jumping at the deep end and, you know, make a pass at the person, or try to get connected with them sexually by exchanging numbers or BB pins or something like that? What restrains you from something like that if you can just go and have connectionless sex?
So, Denise, you figure that if I do all them things that you just list off, I can tell you in front of all these people here.
That is the idea tonight. We want to hear all your dirty secrets, Corey.
That really comes down to what your personality is all about. I mean, if you are a monogamous person, and that tends to depend too on your family situation, I personally believe. Okay. And I tend to believe that people's approach to relationships and sex depends a lot on their relationship with their opposite sex parent. Okay. Talk with Carrie Ann about that a lot. And yeah, I have conversations sometimes. Right, so either if you grew up in a family where your parents are monogamous, depending on how you relate to your opposite sex parent, depending on how you relate to my mother, I will either really want what I have with my mother with another female, or I want something completely different. So I grew up with two parents that are married, and my approach to relationship is basically to be monogamous.
Well, I don't know about the women in France, but when you go out in Barbados and you see a woman in her leggings, all kind of emotions start coming. I don't know.
God bless the man that created leggings. That woman, whoever.
Leggings harm more men than other men, so I don't know.
Wow.
But I mean, if you're a married person and you get those, and you see the situation presenting itself, personally, I don't believe you should be married and doing those things. But if it happens, then it depends on what morals and scruples as an individual that you have. I mean, if you marry somebody and then you decide, well, the relationship, anything goes, well, after you give your horn, be prepared to text them.
Okay. Cassandra, the idea that we are in love with someone, when we think of being in love with someone, we think of a deep emotion. You know, we want to be with this person, we admire them, we want to spend time with them, we value them. And we may want to be connected with them sexually because of those overpowering, strong feelings. Now, you've just met someone. You don't know them from Adam. You don't know them very well. And you don't know anything about them. You don't know their past. There's nothing really there to connect the two of you. So it's just a physical chemistry that can happen. And you do have intercourse with this person. Even though there's not that emotional attachment where you might want to say, I am in love with you, do you think there is something about sex that could possibly connect the two of you, that could possibly bind the two of you together, even though you haven't shared words of love or anything like that?
Of course.
And what is that thing? Go on.
Who knows?
Okay.
I don't know. But like, you are connected when you have sex with a person. You become connected.
Yeah.
Sex is a connecting experience.
It's sort of like inadvertent. It's like, you know, you can't breathe in without getting oxygen. You know, so sometimes we think we're not being connected. But when we think of what the nature of sex is, actually science explains it this way, and I mentioned this in my book. We talk about the hormone oxytocin. And we know that this hormone is released when a woman nurses her baby, right? And she wants to connect with that baby. And that's the same hormone that is released when a woman gets a big orgasm. So imagine you're getting this big orgasm with this guy that you don't know. It's the same hormone that's going to want you to connect with this guy. And so maybe, I don't know if that has something to do with the phenomenon where women are hooking up. They are hooking up for sex, for casual sex. But then they're finding that they want the guy to call them the next morning.